Welcome to the Revealed Podcast, where people share their stories and they share how God revealed himself to them in their story. I'm Angie Durham. I'm your host, and I'm really excited to have Randy Young with me today. Now, a lot of y'all that live in Thomasville, you know Randy. I always think of him as being the pulse of Thomasville. And I've even had people say, no, wait a minute, how do I know Randy? Well, Randy you've been writing an article in the paper for how many years now?
22 years, yeah.
You've been teaching at the high school for how long?
26 years. Been doing the football games on the radio for 35 years.
And so we had even talked about maybe doing his story anonymously, and we said, no, there's just too many people who would know the voice of the Jackets.
Yeah,
so.
That wouldn't work. That wouldn't work.
I have a consummate professional in here with me today. Randy, people like to know random stuff, and they may not know this about you, so I'll just throw it out there and ask you, what board game do you hate the most? I told you this was going to be random.
Oh my gosh. Board game that I hate the most. Well, it's really, I guess it would be the one that I like the most is Monopoly because it just takes so long. Yeah. Although somebody shared with me a couple of years ago, there's something in the rules that most people don't know, and I don't remember the twist on it now, but there was something in the rules that allows the game and actually makes the game go much, much faster. And I read it and went, wait, why did nobody ever tell me this? But probably Monopoly, because it's been an investment of so much time in the past.
And I agree with you. I remember reading that somewhere too. And
you
thinking,
remember that?
Yeah. And I'm thinking, my gosh, how did we miss this all these years ago? But yeah, I was that kid that would bump the board after playing. And you know, just,
Yeah, and I always, it always felt like somebody was cheating.
Yeah.
It always felt somebody knew something I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or somebody would get the car and I would get the wheelbarrow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not worth anything.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, when you played it, did you put all the money in the middle, and then if you landed on the free parking thing, you won all the money that was in the middle?
Yes, I do remember doing that.
See, now, I don't think that's part of the rules either. Anyway, again, clearly we didn't know what we were doing. That might be the reason that I didn't like it as much as I probably should have.
Well, and I'm sure that's why I have issues now in life, right?
Yeah, money issues.
Yeah, there you
money
go.
issues. It's all because of Monopoly. Yeah, I agree.
I know that you are quite the history buff.
Yes.
I love history too.
Yep.
Do you just constantly study it by reading or watching documentaries? What's your way of learning most about history?
Reading, for the most part. I read a lot. In fact, I don't remember the last fiction book I read. I just sink myself in because real life is much more interesting than fiction to begin with. And now with the internet, there's so much information that's available on different topics and different places and different people that 15, 20 years ago wasn't available. So if I find a figure in a book that I go, wait a minute now, I don't know if I've heard about them, I can go online and really sink myself into getting what Paul Harvey would say was the rest of the story, and that's pretty much the way I go about it. Local stuff to me is much more interesting because it's right here in the backyard. There's so much of it. So few people really have a grasp of it anymore.
Very true.
Yeah, but I love it.
I know you're married to the beautiful Risa West. I can remember growing up with Risa.
Yes. Just retired.
Yes.
Just
retired. Congratulations to Risa.
Oh, my gosh. I'm so envious. Yeah, she was longtime band director in the Thomas County school system and longtime course director. In the last couple of years, she's been teaching general music to the kindergartners at Hand in Hand and has loved every minute of it. I mean, music has been a part of her from day one, and she's an unusual story in her own right. I mean, she knew exactly what she wanted to do when she was in the 6th grade, exactly what she did. I admire her. She's quite a girl.
That is unusual to know that.
Yep. God planted a seed there, and she had the fortitude to know how to get to it, and how to grow it and nurture it, and she followed it to the T, and again, now able to retire.
Between the two of you, you guys know 3/4 of Thomas County, right? If not,
we can't go anywhere without running into a former student or parents of a former student or a family. It's so funny. I've shared this story several times. for some reason, especially the folks who listen to the football games, Central's football games through the years, you get a preset notion in your mind of what that person looks like, even though you've never seen them. And I have had this happen now 4 times, Angie, where I would be at the store talking to somebody just in general conversation, and it's always a little old lady. They'll look and say, "Are you the guy that does the football games on Friday?" And say, "Yes, ma'am." And they always say, "You sound fatter on the radio." And I've never figured out how you sound fat on the radio.
I don't get that.
You know what I'm saying? Now,
Yeah.
I mean, you and I, we've known each other forever, so you see me and you go, "Okay, well, there's Randy."
Right.
But I guess there's something that these little old ladies think, well, that's just a well-fed boy right there. But anyway. Yeah, we can't go anywhere without having folks stop us and talk to us about this or that. And
well, I'm going to have a real complex if people tell me, "Wait, I've heard you on your podcast, and you seem thinner on your podcast."
I don't think that's going to happen. You're in good shape, and I will attest, she's in very good shape. She's a beautiful lady. So, yeah, and I'm not fat either.
No, Randy is not.
Not there's anything wrong with that, but
that's right.
Just saying.
And I know you all have 2 children. You have Marion Rose and Ransom Lee.
That's right. Marion Rose, who's just turned 20 and just moved out. So we're in the process of dealing with that, which it's all good. It's part of the process. And Ransom's 15. He'll be going to Central this year as a freshman. Yeah. And both very artsy, very, very talented kids. Yeah, we've been blessed by them.
That's neat. So you're about to be in the passenger seat while Ransom's driving some. And,
it's that time. We've been talking about that, and he's eager to do it. And, that's the first step, spreading their wings a little bit. So
yes,
here it is.
Yes.
You're changing their diaper one day, and then they're asking for the keys of the car the next day.
It is the darn truth,
Yep.
I swear.
Yep.
Well, so many people do know you and they know your family, but they may not know the story that you and I have been talking about some. So let's start getting into that a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm going to let you take the ball and start rolling with
Kind
that.
of set the table a little bit.
Set the table.
Well, what we're talking about is I never knew my biological father. I never met him. And as it turns out, there have been, a lot of blessings. I know that there are folks who would be tempted to take something like that and make it into a burden. But it has just happened that my faith and pretty well just going with God's call with where I needed to go with my life and what I needed to do, that situation has turned into some pretty deep blessings along the way. I was in Jacksonville is where I was born, and my mom wasn't able to keep me. She was just out of high school, and he was, again, young guy. It happens all the time, and just for whatever reason, wasn't willing or able to be able to take care of it or take care of his responsibility with it. So my grandparents stepped in, which is what happens so many times, and they took me in and pretty well raised me until I was about 11 or so. And when you're a kid, my grandparents weren't people of means by any means. My grandfather was a truck driver, and my grandmother was mentally disabled. She had schizophrenia, believe it or not. And I think that was a result of some things that had happened to her when she was younger, too. And she was hyper-religious. That's what she used, I think, as a tool to fight those demons. Yeah, that she had fought when she was younger. And looking at it now, I can see there were some unusual things about the arrangement. But when you're a kid, you don't know any better.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have any air conditioning, for example, which, of course, I guess.
Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
We had an attic fan, which you turn the fan on, you'd open the windows up, and it sucked air in through every window and then circulated it through the house. Now, it might be 105 degrees outside, but the air was moving. And then, of course, all the curtains would stand up because of the wind coming through. And as a kid, I thought that was kind of cool. But I never really lacked for anything. I always had a meal, always had a roof over my head, always had clothes to wear. They weren't the nicest, but again, as a kid, didn't think anything of it. It was just the way it was.
Did you have any other kids that you played with? Were there kids in your neighborhood?
Oh, yeah. Big time. In fact, we had... it was a very diverse neighborhood because, I mean, everybody there was fairly low income. I mean, I think most of the houses that were in our neighborhood were built after World War II for military families. And heck, I mean, we had black kids and we had Asian kids, we had white kids. My best friend was a Syrian family that lived right behind us. And yeah, I mean, that was my crew. I mean, we were embracing diversity before embracing diversity was cool, you know. But again, it was a good existence. It wasn't like there was anything negative associated with it. Now, what was kind of odd was my mom was still a part of my life, and she eventually married a man that would become my stepfather eventually, and they had 2 boys, and those were my brothers, but living in the house with my grandparents, I also had an uncle that lived there that it felt like he was a brother. And
because of the age.
Yeah, we were about 8 years apart. I mean, and we were in the same house together. So it wasn't like I looked, but I didn't question it. I mean, my grandfather was my male role model, and which was great. I mean, he's a wonderful man, one of the heroes of my life. But I always called my mom's husband Daddy, but I knew that he wasn't, you know, in the back of my mind. And when I was about 8 or so, my grandmother sat me down, and I'm glad she did this. I mean, she asked me if my mom had ever talked to me about the story and what was going on with my biological father. And I guess she waited until I was old enough to be able to wrap my brain around it a little bit. Doing it any younger would have probably been more confusing than anything. But I was friends with kids who were kind of in the same situation. So it wasn't like I was surprised to learn it, but at the same time, I wasn't crushed it was just, again, part of life. So I was able to sit down with my mom at that point, and she kind of filled me in, but I could tell in talking to her, it was still raw, you know, and I totally got that. And I don't know, it was never a part of my life, so it wasn't like I was missing something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I guess in the back of my mind, I would think sometimes, okay, there's somebody out there who is my father. But again, in my existence, things were good.
Yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't
like a good family life, like you said. Everything was provided for, and they didn't make you feel like you didn't belong there.
I had people who loved and supported, and thank goodness, and thank God. Even at that young age, that's what I focused on. I mean, I could have, and I understand somebody going, okay, well, doggone it, and then getting stuck in a pit of misery and anger, but I had people who cared for me. So, you know, life was good.
That was something we had talked about just with people who've been adopted and people who haven't known the origins of their birth parents.
Yep.
I've just known people who've had a deep rejection,
Yep.
and they have had problems dealing with that. And I've seen them kind of pull away from the families that took them in. And
Yep.
I love the way that you are able to look at that and just realize that, you know what, I'm blessed here. And
right. And I totally, for the folks who may hear this and know people that just that fit what you're describing, I totally get that. I totally understand that. But I guess, I don't know, I've always had a sense of maturity to me where you can't undo it. You know, again, you cannot let the past, what is gone, you can't change it, but you can learn from it and you can do better from it. And I guess as I went on, in the back of my mind and maybe in the back of my soul, it was a motivator in a sense where I wanted to be better than that. I wanted to do better than that, you know? And anyway, that was the way it was until my grandmother passed when I was 11, and I was adopted legally by my mom and my stepfather. And that's when we came to Thomasville, and been here ever since. But when it really started turning, and if I'm talking too much now, you can stop me, is when Reese and I had kids, because she was asking questions about potential issues handed down through genetics,
right, that
I could not answer. Now I had half the story,
right, with your mom.
Yeah, but I didn't have the whole story. And this was about the time the internet became a thing, And I did, not by any means something like I was obsessed, but I mean, every now and then I knew his name, but I had no clue where to even start. And I would search a name, or but it always a dead end. Just never did happen. And I don't remember specifically when this was. It was probably around 2008, 2009. My stepfather sent me a link to an online yearbook for the high school that he attended in Jacksonville. I started looking through it, and of course, he had sent it for me to be able to look at his photographs and so forth. But as I was looking through it, and of course looking at all the buzz cuts and the beehive hairdos and the big Buddy Holly, big black rimmed glasses and so forth, and thinking, man alive, what a time to live. I saw a face that looked just like me. And it had the name that I always knew. And I was dumbstruck because there he was. And that had never been mentioned, that he was, that my stepfather knew him, or that it never had been brought up. But there he was. And I was able to, because this was a senior yearbook, it had his middle name. But of course it had all the things he had participated in, his vice president of the student body and all this stuff. And I was able to go to those photographs and see images of him. And it was just so weird, almost surreal. But I had that middle name that I never had before. And when I did a search for that name, immediately I found him.
Wow.
Yep.
I was talking to somebody earlier that in the kingdom of God, there's really no such thing as a coincidence.
Oh my gosh.
And so as I'm hearing you talk about that,
Yep.
It's just, what is the likelihood that you're looking through this yearbook?
Yep.
And to just be able to, that must have been weird to just feel like you're just looking at a picture of yourself.
It was. And I've never breached the subject with my stepfather to ask if that was intentional or not. I don't know. But it was what it was. And at that point, I was able to figure out where he worked and so forth. So I put a letter together and made it very clear that I wanted nothing. I wasn't looking for anything other than information. Put all the information about my mom in there and what I knew about him and what I knew about them, and mailed it. Nothing. Crickets. And about 6 months or so went by. And again, I don't want it to sound like I was obsessed with this by any means, but this was important. I mean, I totally, at this point, you're talking about information that could be literally life-saving in some ways, depending on what you find out. So there was a little more urgency there. There was a need. And before there hadn't been a need. Thought, well, maybe it didn't get delivered. Mail being what it is, happens. Mm-hmm. So I resent it. Not a thing. Crickets. And at that point, being the historian guy, I decided to do some genealogical research and found him and his family online, and was able to find that he had 4 daughters, 2 of whom were on Facebook. And I've got a big social media presence on Facebook, and was able to find both of them. Took pretty much what I had sent to him and just said, look, I'm not looking for a thing other than information, blah, 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 and just sent it to him as a private message. Nothing. And
you sent it to one of your sisters?
2 of them.
Or 2 of your sisters.
Yep,
okay.
Through Facebook.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't figure out how to find their physical mailing address. Anyway, I'm not that savvy with all this stuff, but I was able to find them on Facebook. Not a thing. So at that point, I just said, well, this, again, God doesn't want me to know that. I mean, so I just pretty well flushed and moved on. And around Thanksgiving of 2012, I got a Facebook private message from one of the girls and said, I am his daughter. I have some answers for you. Call me. And you talk about,
And how long was this? So that was 2012.
This went on for a couple of years, total up.
See, I would have had so much trouble just letting that thing.
Well, but again, it's either you believe that it's happening or that God's got his hand on it, or he doesn't, you know, and there was only so much I could do. I mean,
that's true.
I mean, and the last thing, because the thought went through my mind, Angie, of just finding his home and just going up there.
Right.
But I'm not going to do that. Guy's got a life. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just not going. I'm not doing that.
Right.
I'm not doing that. But here it was though with this daughter, and I'll be honest with you, the reality of talking to her was making the choice to make that call was much harder than I thought it was going to be. Because exactly about what we were just talking about. You open that door, you open that box. Mm-hmm. Now you don't close it back, and you have no idea who you're dealing with or who you're about to open this box with. This is a total set of humanity here that you have no clue about.
Right.
And just as easy as it would be for them to look at me and go, okay, now what's up with him? Is he like a drug addict? I mean,
right.
Same thing for the other side. I had no clue, none.
You could be opening a door you may not have wanted to have
exactly.
opened. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. You just don't know what's going to happen on that other side of that because you don't know who you're dealing with and their motivations and what they believe. And but as again, prayed about it, and Risa and I talked about it over and over again. And as she said, how can you not? How can you not? Now that you've got that right there, how can you not? Because God has put this here.
Right.
Now, again, this is not an accident.
Yeah, for this time and this place.
That's right.
Now.
So I called the next day and was able to speak to actually two of the sisters, one of which was not on Facebook but was close to the one that had contacted me, and found out that 2 weeks before that he had passed away.
Oh my gosh, Randy.
Yeah.
I mean, what did that...
Well, now hold on. Again, initially, I went, oh, you got to be kidding me. But here's how God works. At that point in time, I didn't know that on Facebook, if you and I aren't friends, if I send you a message, it doesn't go to your inbox. It goes to other things like message requests or other, which is what it used to be called, was other. And that's like a spam mailbox, all kinds of junk. Well, only at the suggestion of a friend of my half-sisters, she said, you may want to check that because there may be some condolence messages or something in there from people that you haven't seen.
Wow.
And that's how she found it. And of course, to hear her family now, whenever she found it, she hollered, screamed, "Oh my God," because there had been talk through their family for years and years. There was a boy out there somewhere. I'm the only son. I'm the only boy you ever saw.
So there had been a little bit of rumblings about it in the family through the years. Had they ever?
They didn't know. Well, they didn't know what to do, and he was the type of guy, unfortunately, that if it wasn't part of his existence for him, then it didn't exist. You know what I'm saying? I think he had built some walls along the way as a measure of self-protection in some ways, which happens all the time.
And especially that's a different generation
that's
than
exactly
where we
right.
are now.
Yeah, and he was a very successful guy. He had done very, very well with what he had done through his life. Mm-hmm. So this would have been a problem to reconcile. So I get it. I don't say I approve of it, but I get it. But there had been talk. There had been talk. And what's even more odd, Angie, is that I remember early on in my life, my grandfather would talk about phone calls that he would get from, I remember him saying his family. And it was my father's uncles and so forth that would call every now and then just to check to see how I was doing. So parts of the family knew, but other parts didn't. But there had been rumblings, and these two girls had heard them. So this was just confirmation of it.
There is a brother out there.
Yeah, there is a brother. And I'll tell you, 4 weeks after that happened, I had been in contact with his wife, who actually had one of the letters that I had sent. He had gone to her with one of those letters basically and said, I don't know what to do about this. And he died of cancer. And he was in the last stages of it. And from her standpoint, she just, whatever he needed to do at that point, that's what he needed to do. But to her credit, she had told me after we had established contact that she was going to get in contact all of the girls and say, what do y'all want to do? And let them kind of, because they would be the ones that would be connected to me, not her, but to her credit. And I admire that. But 4 weeks after the fact, I was in his home. And with all
4 weeks after his death, you mean?
Well, 6 weeks
4 weeks after
we had established
contact.
Yeah.
And then,
This was like 6 weeks after he had died.
Okay.
I was in his home with all 4 of those girls and his wife, and again,
how in the heck?
Surreal is the only way I can put it. Surreal. And what's crazy about it, Angie, I walk into the place, and one of the first people I see is the youngest girl who looks just like me. And that was a cold slap. But walking into his office area and seeing images on the wall of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Robert E. Lee and these people who are
that you've studied, that you know the history.
You walk into my home, there's Robert E. Lee, there's Thomas Jefferson, there's George Washington. On his bookshelves, all these history books that are on my bookshelves. He was a writer. He was a teacher. Yeah.
You guys never
met. Nope. DNA is something you can't dance around, I can tell you. Oh. And I'm the only person in my family that has a college education, okay? He was the only member of his family coming up that got a college education. And I can't explain any of that.
So many similarities.
Yes. His brother is a well-known guitar player in Virginia. And of course,
and you love the guitar. You play the guitar.
Yeah, I've been playing semi-professionally for about 40 years now. I know.
So when the sisters saw you,
oh my gosh,
and obviously you had a likeness physically,
yes.
But did they notice that there were mannerisms about you too that were similar to him?
Yes. In fact, what's really neat is that, I mean, I have visited now during the holidays. We've gone to weddings for their kids. I mean, their kids call me Uncle Randy, which is bizarre, which is so cool.
That is cool.
But when I'm in the room with all of them, I feel like I'm being stared through, especially from his wife, because she'll see little quirks with like a smile or like an expression, and you kind of feel her go, okay, that's just too weird. And I think too, there's a sense of relief in some ways for them that there was a son there, because I think he always wanted a son and made it very clear that he got frustrated that he kept having girl after girl, because he loved them now. And but for them, they see a lot of him in me, and I cannot explain that other than, again, DNA.
Well, and you think about the fact that it was 2 weeks after his death
Mm-hmm.
when you finally made the connection with your sisters. And when you first started talking about that, I just felt so deflated, because I'm thinking, gosh, I wish Randy could have met him.
Yeah, but, and I think I shared this with you, again, God knows exactly what he's doing if you just let him do it, because the hardwiring of the way my father was, if I had been able to establish contact with him before he passed, I don't know that the relationship between me and those girls, and especially between me and his wife, would have ever happened. I don't know that he would have allowed it out of self-protection, which I get it. You know, you look at it through his eyes, not my eyes, through his eyes. I get it. But it's like family now. Yeah. We're like family. And I don't know that could have happened and now I feel 100% confident that now he's sitting there smiling down going, okay, God, you had it the whole time. It turned out exactly as it was supposed to.
Well, it's so interesting that even though he's not here on this earth anymore, but he is the bond that glues all of y'all together. Yep.
And I will say, I think it's been tough for a couple of the girls because the 2 younger girls did not know that there was a chance that there was a boy out there somewhere. And that's been difficult. And I hate that. But I've made it very, very clear. I don't want them to change anything that they feel about their father. He loved them. He took care of them and raised them. And Angie, I would not be here without him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My children would not be here without him.
That's true.
So regardless of all of the baggage, the bottom line is my life has been right here in front of me, and the choice to try to make the most of it was not his.
Right.
It's mine. That's my book, not his. So I've tried to write it as best I can, and now he's a part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It does. And that can be just a very shocking thing when you've never known that there could be another sibling out there.
Yes.
And so just working through that can
Yes.
take time.
Yes.
And then I'm really grateful I'm not the human I was in high school.
Ooh. And I, the people that I have shared this with, that's where it always comes back to is, are you mad at him? Are you bitter? No. I mean, I'm glad that I'm not held accountable for all the things that I've done wrong in my life. That's
Amen. That's what grace and mercy is all about.
period. I mean, if we were judged on the sum of our wrongs, we deserve nothing more than death. But we've done better. We've learned, you know, and I'm no different. Do I wish I had him as a father in my life? Sure. I'd be lying to say not, but I didn't. I mean, but I did have people who loved me. I had people who cared about me. And I cannot undo the choices that were made, but all I can do is take those choices and try to make the best of them that I can for what I've got in front of me. I mean, God's put the moment here in front of me not to be wallowing in bitterness, to try to do something with it positive.
Right.
You know, that's a choice. That's a choice.
What about, I know that you and Risa were just, you know, any of us, when we go to the doctor, you have to give a family history.
Yeah.
So did you guys find out of anything in the family history that you needed to
Yes.
be aware of?
Yes, definitely. Well, cancer is a part. I mean, that's what took his life, was cancer. And depression issues. His father committed suicide because of depression issues. And unfortunately, that runs on both sides of our family, of Risa and mine. So we've fought some issues with it with Mary and Rose, but I think she's finally kind of getting her wheels up under her. It's just everybody's got a bag of junk to drag behind them,
Right.
you know? Yeah, but at some point in time, you have to just acknowledge it and say, okay, I'm just going to do the best I can with it. And now, because I have the knowledge of the cancer issue and so forth, like colonoscopies and things that I probably wouldn't have put a whole lot of priority on before. That's a much bigger banner to wave now. So I'm very thankful that I know that. And for my own son now, who's carrying those genes, that'll be important for him as he goes along too.
And that just shows you too that, you know, knowing that history will benefit you, because
Very much.
then, like you said, if there's an early detection that you need to do,
Absolutely.
you know to do that and not to play around with it.
Absolutely.
So do you continue to stay in contact
Oh,
with
yeah.
the new family now?
Oh, yeah.
And what's that been like?
Our family, Risa and our kids, have spent the night at every one of their homes.
Now that's
repeatedly.
really saying something.
Yeah. I mean, we've gone to, like I said, we've gone to weddings. We've participated in holidays. They've sent, presents for the kids' birthdays and like Mary and Rose's graduation and stuff. And we're in regular contact. I mean, it's just like any other family, though. I mean, we've all got our own lives. We're all busy.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're constantly, I mean, my own brothers live within a stone's throw of where I live here in Thomasville, and we rarely see each other. I mean,
I can relate to that.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, months will go by and I don't see them. So it's not like we're all over at each other's house all the time, but we text, and we, like my newspaper columns, I'll send them to them and so they can read them. Or if some, and he was a huge Georgia fan too, which of course I'm a huge Georgia fan.
Yes, you are.
So we've gone to games with them and tailgated with them, and so I mean it's like a family, and it's a blessing. I mean, it's just no way around it. It's a huge, and two, whatever hole there might have been is fulfilled now. It's full. There's not a gap there.
You know, and that's just so phenomenal how God can heal all of that.
And Angie, Well, okay, when you made the comment earlier about how long did it take, see, what I didn't know, I mean, the wheels were turning, but I didn't see them turning, so I didn't think they were turning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You and I talked about the old folks here. If you look inside the back of a clock, like an old grandfather clock, there are all kinds of gears and stuff that are interlocked. And some of them are spinning really, really fast. Some of them not so fast. But then some of them, if you stand there for 10 minutes, you go, well, that's not doing anything. Well, yeah, it is. You just don't see it happening. And what this has taught me more than anything is that even though you may not see God's hand moving things around you, it's happening. You just got to have the faith to know that it's happening and let it play out.
That's such a good word, because I think no matter what we're going through, when we feel like our prayers are just hitting the ceiling and they're not being answered and we can't see things,
Yep.
like you said, that are in the background, there's so many things that have to fall into place.
Yep.
And in our humanness, we could never make all those things fall into place.
Exactly.
But I know if there's something that, I'm waiting for an answer on, I'll say, God, I know you're working.
Yep.
Thank you that you're working.
Yep.
Even when I don't feel it, even when I don't see it.
Yeah. Well, that's faith.
Yeah.
I mean, that's faith. That's that. If that isn't faith, then I don't know what faith is. And if you believe, then you have to have the belief that the pieces are being moved according to the way God wants them to move. And that's the bottom line. And you have to remove your eagerness, your anxiety, your anxiousness out of it, and just have faith that it will be as it's supposed to be.
Right.
The plan, again, like those gears in that clock,
I love that.
There's so many of them. There's no way to comprehend unless you're a clockmaker.
Right.
Unless you're the maker.
Yeah.
There's no way to comprehend how all that's working together. It's too much. But at the end of the day, when you look at the dial on the front of it, you know that it's keeping time and it's doing what it's supposed to do.
You just gave such a beautiful definition of trust.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
You trust that the time on that clock is
That's
the
right.
right time.
That's exactly right. And if it's not, then you make the adjustments that you have to make it work right.
I love it.
Anyway, but that's the negative of all of that so early on has just turned into a huge blessing for everybody involved. I've met aunts that never had a nephew before, and have spent time at. I have an aunt that lives in Virginia who never had a nephew. All she had was nieces. Well, now there's a nephew, and we've gone and spent a week at her home, and they've come here and visited, and it's just, again, God had his hand on it the whole time. I just had to get out of the way and let him do his thing. Yeah.
Do you realize what a gift you are to that family? I'm just thinking of just the joy it would be to just meet somebody that you had no idea that y'all had the same blood running through you.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then to be able to have the connection and
Yep.
be able to just share and so many wonderful things together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a blessing. And we've talked many times because, like my aunt, for example, she remembers a lot of the stuff that happened when I came around, because she was here. I mean, she was around.
Mm-hmm. What was the age difference between your aunt and your father?
About, let me see. Probably 12, 13 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, she was young, but she remembers it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? All of the questions that they have asked are the same questions that I have asked. And unfortunately, you know, the folks who can answer those questions aren't here. I mean, he's not here to be able to answer it. And I, by no means, I don't want to sound like I'm condemning him in any shape, form, or fashion. No, not
I
even
don't hear
close.
that.
Okay, I hope not. I
hear
don't,
that at all.
because again, you're talking a 19, 20-year-old kid,
Right.
with the world on top of him.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to judge.
No.
Not even close. But the fact, though, that I'm here is where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
And the fact that all of us are focusing on what, and I told them this the first time we met. There's no bitterness, there's no anger, and there's not. And I'm not asking for anything other than what God wants the relationship to be.
If y'all had walked away that day and
Then-
just never really communicated much anymore,
Right.
then
So be it.
yeah.
As I had an aunt who used to say, every pot's got to sit on its own bottom. And that's the truth. I mean, at some point in time, you got to settle what fits with you. And that to me is the key. You can either use the burdens of the past as an anchor that's going to hold you from being able to move ahead, or you use them as a motivation. You either drown under them or you swim above them and let them carry you. You know what I'm saying? And that's a choice. And that's not just with a situation like this. It's anything. I mean, if somebody's done you wrong, or you see a situation like we've seen so many social injustices and things that have happened here lately that everybody hates.
Right. Yeah.
Well, okay, we can't undo it. We can't change it. Let's
Right.
better ourselves. Let's make ourselves better from it and find what God wants us to do and be faithful in that walk.
As you're talking to, something else came to mind, because I've been doing a little bit of my family history, and it's been just important for me to do that for myself, just to know where I came from.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've watched some of these shows on TV where people will look for their birth parents, and it's even more important for people to have that connection,
Mm-hmm.
to figure out where they came from. Why do you think that is such an important thing in us, where we just want to know where we came from?
Because, I mean, look at me. The so many of the characteristics that I have as a human being cannot be attributed to anything other than what was handed down to me through my genes, my DNA, period.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other explanation for it. And that is a basal part of who and what you are as a human being. You can't dance around that.
Yeah.
Everything about you, your eye color, your hair color, the shape of your face, I mean, the shape of your body, it is all pre-programmed in there. So to be able to get a better grasp of where that came from, it helps you understand who you are as a
Yeah.
human being. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I also want to add this too, Angie. I've got a very, very good friend here in Thomasville. Again, not mentioning any names, who comes from the exact same situation that I came from. And he has chosen not to try to chase down his biological family because of the way human nature is in this day and time. I think he's concerned that he's going to be opening up a Pandora's box that's not going to be positive.
Yeah.
And that once it's open again, he's not going to be able to close it.
Yeah.
And some people don't need it. They're perfectly, again, their pot's sitting fine on the bottom that it's sitting on. And there's nothing wrong with that. And to be honest with you, I had resigned myself to the fact where I was good with where I was too. I didn't think it was going to happen. So I was good. I do the best I could do. But God stepped in and changed that. And that was not of my making.
Right.
You know? So I don't want to condemn anybody, and I sure don't want to make anybody feel like if they have the same situation, they're going, well, I really ought to do this, but I'm not sure. No, I mean, if you've prayed about it and you feel secure and you're good with then don't. You're fine. But if there's a hole there, or if you've got questions that you need answered, like I did,
such as things that could affect you medically,
Yep.
yeah,
then give it a shot. And again, if it's supposed to happen, trust me, it'll happen.
And that's such good advice, because that was going to be my next question to you. What if somebody's sitting out there and they're thinking, gosh, I've always wondered, but I think you give the right words, that you've got to pray about that and just see if that's something God's leading you to do.
Exactly.
Because God placed you where he did for a reason.
Absolutely.
You were not an accident.
Absolutely.
And he knows
what's going to be
whether or
best
not-
for you.
Yeah.
He knows what's going to be best for you. But at the same time, I mean, we have free will.
Yeah.
I mean, and God has given us that free will for a reason as well. And the way I approached it, if it happened, it happened. I tried. I gave it a shot. If it happened, it happened. And I had pretty well, again, resigned myself to the fact that it wasn't going to happen. But again, I didn't see that gear turning. I didn't see that. I didn't see that happening. So I didn't understand all the other parts that were going on that I had no clue about that eventually would lead to that door being open.
Yeah.
But it's a personal choice, totally up to you. If there's a hole there, if there's a need there, then I encourage you to do so. But if not,
That may
amen.
not be the right thing.
Amen.
Yeah. One other question I want to ask you that you just brought up about your grandma was her being hyper religious.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there may be people out there too who are listening to this and they've grown up in a home where everything's hyper religious, and that can cause people to turn away from God. So did that ever have that effect on you?
No, but I can absolutely see where that could happen. The only thing that I will say to someone who would look at, there's a reason for that behavior. That isn't something that's being done as, again, a free will choice. That there is something in the story there behind that hyper religiousness that's motivating and pushing that behavior. And I don't know for a fact, but I'm 95% sure, like with my grandmother, she was abused when she was young. And that was her shield.
Right.
And when she saw things that she felt like were crossing the line of morality, or again, of what you were supposed to be doing, that was what she used as her shield. And it kicked in almost instinctively as a protection mechanism. And I can guarantee anybody else, you need to step away a little bit and think, okay, why is this being used this way? It's not being done frivolously. It is a protection device somewhere, for somebody who's gone through something that they can't handle on their own accord. Guaranteed. And you have to have enough faith to know that if you've got a situation with somebody is like that in your life, you have to be big enough. That's not you. I mean, that's not your book that's being represented there. That's their book. But that doesn't mean that you can't learn from that and say, again, something's happened there that I need to help. I need to rise above. I need to be an advocate for speaking out against this type of thing. You know what I'm saying? That there's something there somewhere where you can help somebody, because that's not that type of behavior. Most of the time, it's just not a choice. It's a protection mechanism, no question.
And I'm sure you've seen that too, just in the years that you've been working with teenagers, that there will be things that will happen in their childhoods, and then when they get to be older, they've got these defense mechanisms that they've built up. And of course, our first instinct as adults is, well, that child needs a good spanking. And what in reality is, they are hurting inside. And
oh my gosh,
they are responding the only way they know how to respond.
That's it. And Frank Delaney, Papa D, he was one of my life heroes, along with my grandfather. He's up there on the top of that mountain. He has a line that he has used before that I think says it better than anything. Gorillas don't make chickens, and chickens don't make gorillas. And that means if you've got a somebody in your existence who's a gorilla, you know what? There's something there that has caused them to be a gorilla. If they're a chicken, their DNA, environment, the home situation, and everything, that's all reflected in them. And if you want to know what's wrong with a child, more times than not, meet their parents, go to their home, look at what they're dealing with. And it's real easy to figure out, again, that child's not acting that way as a choice. This is a defense mechanism. They're trying to protect themselves somehow, some way. And that's really the bottom line. And it's the same way with adults. I mean, you're a reflection of all the things that you've gone through in your life. And I mean, DNA is a part of it, but environment and all the situations and things that you've seen and gone through, it's going to reflect in you.
Yeah. And, as we're talking too, I can remember something that my mom used to say to me. She used to say, you can be bitter or you can get better.
Yep.
And the difference between those two words is the letter I.
Yep.
And so it's
100%.
like you've been saying, we have choices that we can make.
Yep.
And I just see so much grace and mercy in your testimony too, Randy.
Well, and I'll say this too. The folks that have been through the most have the most opportunity to impact others, because they're not pulling a parable from a book somewhere that doesn't connect directly to them. When you're speaking from a voice that has been there, done that, that's normally a situation where other people are going to go, wait a minute, I can relate to that. But you got to be brave enough and strong enough and faithful enough to use it for good. And know that there's an opportunity there to use it for good if you choose to do it, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes total sense. And it's really a large part of this podcast
Yep.
is us taking those masks off and
Yep.
just coming out and sharing our stories,
Yep.
because there are other people out there that are hurting.
Yep.
And especially now with everything going on in our world,
Yep.
people want to be encouraged and they want to know that they have hope.
Yeah, and we all tend to go through life looking at our situation as the only situation of its kind that's ever happened in the history of mankind. And even though, again, everybody's an individual and there's not another one of you and not going to be another one of you, you have an opportunity. Everybody has an opportunity to positively impact somebody else if you just step out and make that choice. And it takes bravery, it takes faith, but at the same time, people need to hear that they're not the only one dragging a bag of junk behind them.
I agree with you. And I think the other thing that has happened to us in our society is we've gotten so stinking busy.
Oh,
and,
man.
And you know,
Yep.
and you know, you've been raising kids. I've been raising
Yep.
kids all these years, but you just get in your own world, and
Yep.
there are people right in front of you
Yep.
that are hurting.
Yep.
And I can remember a friend of mine telling me that when she used to be in the pickup line at Brookwood, that she would wave at this other lady and just smile at her every day. And years later, that other lady in that car told my friend, your smile and your wave got me through what I was going through. I was going through a horrible divorce, and just every day seeing you in that pickup line and just smiling and waving at me just made my day.
Yeah, you never know what an act of kindness is going to do and how much it's going to impact somebody. And unfortunately, because of the way our society now is hardwired, everybody's compartmentalized.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's in their own little. I mean, I like to say that we've been herded into our corners. You've got the far left that's over in their corner, and the far right, and they're just screaming at each other.
Yeah, and you better get on a side.
Right, but most of us are somewhere between them.
I agree.
And we need to be speaking up. I mean, the folks that are in between those folks that are just screaming at each other, we need to be speaking up, because there's got to be voices of normalcy and hope. Because if there's not, then what are we doing? You know, why are we even doing it?
Why are we here?
Right. Right.
Well, you are definitely one of those voices.
Well, thank you.
And I can't thank you enough for just coming here and sitting with me today and sharing your story.
Well, I hope it'll inspire. I hope it'll make folks think a little bit. And one of the blessings I've got, Angie, as a teacher, I'm able to be around young people who need to hear they're not the only one out there, again, fighting the fight.
That's right.
And if you are an adult and you've got your own struggles that you've gone through, I encourage you, write it down. Contact Angie. I mean, come share it, because everybody needs to hear, again, they're not alone in the woods. And it's very important.
And I appreciate that. If there is anybody out there that wants to share their story, you can contact me at Angie@revealedpodcast.org. You can go on our website and check out more information there at www.revealedpodcast.org. I would love it if you guys would find us on Facebook and find us on Instagram and like us, and go on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast and give us a like so other people can find us. We hope that this has encouraged you today.